Cool. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the September live chat in our 2023 series about the AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellowships. My name is Manal Sarwar, and I'm the recruitment director here at STPF, and I'll be your moderator today. This series of live chats is your opportunity to ask fellows your questions, and we hope that through these chats, you'll see how the fellowship can impact policy and transform your career. To put today's session in context, we are hosting one chat each month during the application season. We're glad you're here today and invite you to join us for the last session in October. We'll have 3 fellows to talk to, and you can ask about the application process in that next chat as well. As you can see, each chat will focus on different aspects of the fellowship experience, and we'll have different fellows as panelists for each one. Today, we're going to discuss how the fellowship has informed the careers of fellows and how they remain engaged in policy and leadership roles after their fellowship. And a quick reminder, in case you haven't heard, but you probably have by a million times 5 minutes from now, STPF is currently accepting applications through November 1st. Someone who applies this year will be considered for a position in the 2024-25 fellowship class. These fellowships are an opportunity for doctoral level scientists and engineers to spend a year contributing their expertise to federal policy. For 2023 applicants, positions are available in all 3 branches of the federal government, executive, legislative, and judicial. You are able to apply to up to 2 out of those 3 areas. For a sense of timing, someone who applies in 2023 will be considered for a position in the fellowship class that runs from September through August. Of September 24 to September 2024 through August of 2025. Applicants must be U.S. citizens, hold a doctoral degree in the sciences, social sciences, or engineering, and cannot be a full-time federal or AAAS employee. Those of you with a master's in engineering plus 3 years of professional engineering experience are also eligible to apply. They are paid 1-year full-time commitment in Washington, D.C. Wondering if you're eligible to apply or if you're interested in the application overview, please visit our application portal. That link is now in the chat box to learn the ins and outs of STPF eligibility and the application. Okay, and then on to the purpose of today's chat. This is really you getting the chance to ask your questions to our fellows. So use the question box in the menu bar as shown here. And if you like, you can indicate who you would like your question to go to, and we're going to try to get through as many questions as we can today. So now I am happy to introduce you to our fellows. So Dr. Amy Hafez is a health science policy analyst at the National Institutes of Health in the Office of Science Policy. She works with Scientific Data Sharing Policy Division to monitor the research and science policy ecosystem and develop biomedical research policy toward bolstering scientific data management and sharing and ultimately enhancing research validation and progress. Dr. Hafez recently served as a AAAS Science Technology Policy Fellow and a Congressional Science Policy Fellow through the American Chemical Society. She earned her PhD in molecular genetics and microbiology from Duke University. Dr. Hai Nguyen has 15 years of physics teaching experience at the University of Mary Washington, where he was chair of the Department of Physics. In 2018, Dr. Nguyen was selected to be an American Associate for AAAS's Science Technology Policy Fellow, working at the Pentagon. After the fellowship, Dr. Nguyen accepted a permanent position in the Pentagon in Nuclear Command, Control, and Communications Future and Cross-Cutting Integration in the Office of Secretary of Defense, OSD. Amy, thank you for being here today. We're still waiting on Dr. Nguyen. We're hoping that he's able to come through soon, but until then, you'll have us, and we'll go through and have the back and forth. So,
good morning. This is Hai Nguyen. My apology. I am on the phone. I'm following the introduction. I'm trying to log on via the internet, but right now you have me on the phone.
Oh, wonderful! What a great surprise, Dr. Nguyen. Thank you for making the time and for joining us through the phone. So excited for the fellows to hear from you too. So for both of you, and Amy, if you can kind of like start us off with this question, I'd love to talk to you about how the fellowship impacted the trajectory of your career. I think we're muted.
Okay, there we go. Hi,
Awesome.
everyone. Thank you so much. It's so great to be here with all of you today and to talk a little bit about the fellowship experience. I learned about the fellowship experience while I was in graduate school. I think I attended something very similar to this live chat series. And when I learned about, what the types of activities fellows were doing, all of a sudden it sort of clicked in my brain that, oh, these are the types of questions that I like to think about and that I like answering. And this is probably, something that I should think about as far as my career trajectory. And having done the fellowship, I've now completed both the congressional and the executive branch fellowship. It's been an incredible opportunity to get sort of, the behind the scenes view of what conversations are happening in Congress to be able to move certain policies and certain pieces of legislation forward. What is the executive branch? What are the initiatives the executive branch is prioritizing that relate to a lot of the issues that are affecting the research community? I work at the NIH. So specifically the biomedical research community.
And Dr. Wynn, if you can kind of like also talk through like how the fellowship impacted your career.
Yeah, so prior to my fellowship, I was teaching physics at a small liberal arts school. And my main focus was to ensure that my students were prepared to go see the world and make the impact on their own terms. And also, when I became chair of the physics department, I want to ensure that my colleagues and the co-workers that I work with actually, in fact, develop as well into teachers and scientists and get tenure and promoted and move on to bigger things and get their research grant and facilitate all those things for them. But I also do cleaning the whiteboard at the end of the day. I also making sure the trash are taken out. I also making sure that there are enough printer papers in the printers for students to print things out in the morning. So all those things I did as department chair. Now for multiple years, I've been thinking about going on to doing something different, something different from what I've done before, and looking at the AAAS fellowship. I really thought that it's something that I like to do, maybe on my sabbatical, and so I hop on the chance to work on this, and it opened me to multiple possibilities that I've never thought about outside academia. And in fact, to be honest, most, if not all, my academia colleagues are not. I guess you don't know what you don't know. And so, it's hard for them to imagine things outside academia, and rightly so. And so, but the fellowship opened me up to a whole other world of possibilities. And so, and I took the chance, and I'm a lot happier in terms. I mean, in academia, I had tenure, but so is in federal government. There's certain tenure position that you can get, and so I find the work rewarding. That's why I'm staying. Over.
Yeah, I think I'm really glad to have the both of you on today because I think you both came in at different career stages, and I think that's what makes the fellowship really valuable, right? Is you'll have someone like you, Dr. Wynn, who was a professor, had tenure, and still kind of like made a decision, and Amy, you too, like kind of coming during like almost like right after your PhD and experiencing all these different things. So I'm glad that folks get to hear from both sides, which is really neat. So we have a question from the audience already, so keep putting your questions in. But our first question is, what are some of the skills that you learned during the fellowship, and how are they relevant to your current work?
I'd be happy to start. I think from my role in the Congressional Fellowship, writing communication was one of the most important skills that I learned, how to write in a very concise manner in a way that people would understand, because oftentimes we were moving on issues that we didn't really have a lot of time to go into a large seminar for the member of Congress and to get them up to speed on all of the background research that's been done in a particular space. So we had to figure out how to be able to brief members in a very quick manner, make sure they were educated and able to speak on the issue, but also make sure that they understood, both the pros and cons of any sort of decision they would be making in this space. The other side of the role, though, especially working in a personal member of Congress office, you are engaging with a lot of constituents, and I had to develop a skill that I didn't really acquire through research, which was being able to listen to your constituents. I worked on health policy specifically, so oftentimes constituents would come and tell us about, a very difficult experience with either medical practice or provider or a particular disease, and tell us about the most difficult time in their life and what could have helped make that time easier and what we could do in Congress to make it better. So being able to listen to constituents was a skill that I basically had to acquire from day one and fine tune throughout the process, and to be, empathetic and supportive in the way that, you can be in that role. So that was something that, it was a sort of a big shock, like culture shock, essentially, into a new role coming out of academia, having to be able to sort of fine tune those skills as well.
And then, hi, same question to you. What are some of the skills that you learned during the fellowship, and how are they relevant to what you're doing?
Yeah, so I thought I knew everything when I graduated from high school, right? So, and I thought I knew everything when I became the professor as well, right? Because at the time you're professing, you're supposed to know it all. But really, there are, what I learned is that, uh, there are things that, certainly the scientific method will get you through many of the problems and bottlenecks that that the DoD faces, right? Uh, but I think it's about people. I think that when you throw people into the equations, it becomes really a lot more dynamic and a lot more hard to handle. It's a nonlinear equation, and so it's really took me quite a bit to be able to learn from people and listen to people and understand people and the problems they have and the situation they faces. So to be able to overcome uh, the disagreement that I have with them, and so I think that was really something that I thought that was meaningful for me to learn, is that uh, you will encounter difficult problems and you can use a scientific method to solve it. But when you encounter difficult people, the scientific method might not work anymore. And so I think to overcome that, to listen to people, to understand them, to see understand where they're coming from, why they hold the belief that they do, so that you can be more convincing in your argument. And I think that was something that was a challenge for me. Over.
Yeah, I think I got from the both of you just kind of like having to work with people, right, in different capacities. And so, and I honestly do think genuinely, like when I'm on the road talking to folks who are interested in the fellowship, right, if you're grinding at a lab every day, or if you're kind of like seeing the same like 4 to 5 people every day, right, and then kind of having to then really show that skill set, I think is huge. So thank you folks for speaking to that. Next question that we have is, did the fellowship open up opportunities for you that you otherwise wouldn't have if you weren't a fellow?
I think one of the things that, I noticed when I was coming into the fellowship program was how many opportunities are available to scientists in the federal government, but also, working with the federal government through other capacities, either through, a nonprofit, a think tank, other programs that either advise the executive branch or Congress. I sort of, I understand I work at NIH and I came from a biomedical, degree program. But I sort of thought that was it, that was out there. Like, oh, sure, I'll work at NIH or NSF or, maximum like maybe CDC. But I never thought about working in the health space in DOE. I never, my brain just did not make the connections between my work in cancer research and, environmental health issues that EPA was, solving, DOE, USAID, State Department, or like Department of Defense, for example. It originally, as a graduate student, I was just focused on NIH. They were the ones funding my grants and making it possible for me to do my research. So I thought that was the opportunity. It ended up being a really great fit for some of the work that I wanted to do at this stage in my career. But I think, during the interview process for the fellowship, when you get the opportunities in the book, essentially with, all of the offices that are looking for fellows, it was mind-blowing to see all of the actual opportunities that exist. But, that doesn't just end with the federal government. There are a lot of nonprofit organizations based in DC or throughout the country that help advise legislative language, that help advise on committees for the executive branch. So there are so many ways that as scientists we can get involved and we can, create a career in this space without, just working in the government, for example.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. I guess in my comment early on, you don't know what you don't know, right? And so when I was in academia, I had very singularly focused on atomic physics research. That's it. And the National Science Foundation and the Department of Energy are the main funder of those effort. And therefore, when I interview, I gravitate towards those entities, agencies, right? And so, but little did I know, I had only a couple interview with a couple of people in the DOD. I don't know anything about DOD. I never served any military service. I never had, I don't, in my daily interaction, I don't know of too many people who wear uniform. And so it never crossed my mind that, the DOD care about many other things that, that people in academia just don't know. And I was one of those people who just don't know. And it's okay to not know, but at least what I thought was meaningful for me was, okay, I'll give it a chance. I'll go through this through this interview and see what they got. Just be open-minded to see that there might be possibilities that I did not see. And in fact, it was true. There was so many possibilities, so many opportunities that I did not see. Say, for example, I thought that I was gonna be working with a lot of soldiers, and no, not really. And there's a lot of intellectuals, and in fact, as I did turn out, I felt like there's a lot of academic work that I've been doing now than before when I was in school in the supposedly academia. And so I just do peer review, and I'm one of I'm something called the core, the contracting officer representative for FFRDC, the federally funded research development center named MITRE. And so in my portfolio, I have 35 people working at MITRE that I oversee. And so, and their research and development and the work that they do align directly with a lot of things that I have been trying to do as a faculty. And so those possibilities never would have occurred. I would never have known about it. And so it's kind of in retrospect, I wish more people would know more about it. But I guess when you're trying to get your PhD, working your postdoc, trying to get the faculty position, you don't see outside the box, and that's a problem.
Yeah, I think something I'm hearing from both of you there too is kind of like this idea of an open-mindedness, right? And I think within the fellowship program, there are so many different agencies, organizations, and different pathways for fellows to take. And so, when I'm talking to folks who are very like, oh, like I can definitely see myself working at this agency, but really I don't really see myself as a fit at other places. I wonder if both of you can kind of speak to how valuable it is for a fellow who is applying to kind of like have that open-mindedness, right, as you go through the application process, because for the both of you, it kind of like turned into different opportunities. And I was wondering maybe both of you can speak to, how valuable it is to be open-minded during this process.
Yeah, I can follow up with that. I guess being in academia for so long and trying to climb that ivory tower ladder, I lost myself in many ways. And so once I realized that I became repetitive and not have enough innovations, and I'm intellectually lazy, and so I realized that things need to change. And I think that was the kick I needed to say, well, let's open up to possibilities, say yes to things and not rejecting things, and really be look for that silver lining of there's something down that path. There might be something down this path too, and at least talk to the people who gone down that path before and say, hey, what is it that you see? What are the possibilities? At least explore and be curious enough that hey, you might not know where that path will lead you, but have enough curiosity to say, I'm willing to learn to go through that route and understand what are the things that could intellectually challenge me and bring my scientific method research and scientific training that I had under my belt to exercise it in a rigorous way. And so I think it's a matter of finding the right path and be really open-minded about all the potential possibilities that you might face. Because the fact that you're in this conversation, that means you're already scientists and engineers are very well trained and very interested in this already. And the fact that you think about this as an opportunity, continue to do that. There will be more opportunities coming down the path.
I love that mindset. And what I always tell students who are in graduate school or those that are in their postdoc and are at their early career stage, nothing has to be forever. You're not going to take the next job and stay in that job for the rest of your life and then that's it. That's not the way that things work anymore. It could if you wanted it to, but there's so many opportunities out there. Just because you take one step and maybe, okay, not exactly what you were looking for, it adds to your experience, it adds to your, well-roundedness, and it's going to help apply to whatever you do in the future. So I always try to tell people, you know, don't be afraid to do something and, you know, not like it and leave. You don't have to stay there forever. So be open-minded and try to find, you know, new opportunities. I lived by that. I knew going in that I was not looking to find a job in Congress and to work in Congress forever. I looked at it as this is 1 year to learn everything that I can possibly learn, and I can apply this to anything that I do from now on, whether it's working in the federal government or working at a think tank. You know, everything in some way has some ties back to Congress. So this is not the end all be all, but it's just a next step.
Yeah, that definitely. I, it's a next step, right? Uh, uh, it's not be all and all. And looking back in my academic career, I thought that was it. You know, you have the job, you have it for life, and therefore you get tenure and stay there, be all and all. That's it. Well, how good is it gonna be if you're just doing the job over and over? There's no innovation. There's no uh, motivation to do something different, right? Now, granted, the next step, doing something different, there's a level of risk associated with that, right? There's level of fear associated with that, right? And truth be told, when I give up tenure and say, hey, I'm not coming back to the next academic year, and when I wrote that letter, say, hey, thanks a lot for the last 15 years, you know, there was a level of fear, right? What is this next job going to be? How am I going to, I'm going to support myself, I'm going to support my family, yeah, and so on and so forth, right? And you're a scientist, you're an engineer, you'll find a job. The job will be there. It will wait for you. And so there will never be a problem that you cannot solve or be able to attack it, right? And you have the scientific method. You are very useful, and you are very highly sought after type of people. And so don't fear job. Job will be there. And so whether the fear should be uh, complacency, that you get into a job and then you get complacent. That's the fear. Don't waste your time in that. Oh,
Yeah, to add on to that, thing too, this actually kind of goes really well into a question asked in the chat is, do the fellows think that they are able to use the skills that they've developed during their PhD or scientific careers? One thing that they struggle with is spending however many years of training for a PhD only to then pivot into a new set of skills without using this training. So, you know, seeing the transferable skills from like not just your PhD or academia to the next thing, but how have you been able to use the skills that you've developed throughout time to like now implement them into either your next job or your current role, so on and so forth?
There are a couple ways, you know, I could answer this. There are some, you know, transferable skills. Like, for example, you know, a lot of the work that I've done in the past has really been about, you know, using evidence to create policy or using evidence to back policy. You know, if you are able to understand, distill information down in a particular area and, you know, use that evidence to back certain initiatives, that's gonna, you know, that's gonna help you in anything that you do. If you were able to understand, you know, incredibly complex subject areas, that's going to help you in anything that you do. But, you know, more technically speaking, you know, a lot of the work that I do is in data sharing. I think about biomedical and scientific data sharing and how to create better policies that can help, you know, advance and expedite, you know, research discovery. And without my background in research science, I would not be able to add much to this field. It really requires a lot of understanding. I study genetics, cancer genetics, and I work on genetic and genomic data sharing policies now. I attend genetic conferences. to keep up with the technologies that are being developed in that space. So for me, I look at my research as, I am applying it to a different sort of project now. I am moving on to applying the genetics and genomics research and a lot of the biomedical experimentation understanding that I developed in graduate school towards solving more high level problems than a particular developing a particular like drug therapy. And that's a part of why I wanted to come into this fellowship program, to make sure that I could see that connection between some of the work that I did in graduate school and the research that I did to the work that I would be doing in the future. Now, that's not for everyone. Some people come to the fellowship program and they want to pivot. They want to make that change to something that is, maybe a little bit more outside of their field, and they gain a new expertise. They have opportunities to be able to do so. There are opportunities to stay a little bit closer to your field of study. For me, I pivoted a great deal when I moved to Congress. We worked at a very high level. Health policy covered everything from cancer research to Medicare, Medicaid, health insurance programs. And obviously I had very little knowledge of Medicare and Medicaid programs and how a lot of these health insurance programs run. But I realized at the end of that fellowship, I wanted to come back a little bit closer to what was in my heart and what I really loved about what I was doing in graduate school, and move a little bit closer to biomedical research. So I made that pivot back to something a little bit closer to my degree. I think there's a lot of flexibility in science policy to do what interests you, and also is what is a priority at the time. So I think there are opportunities to be able to find something that is close to what you're interested in and uses a lot of the technical skills that you've gained in your research expertise.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I'd like to add that, when you're working so hard, 5, 6, 7, I have colleagues who actually got PhD after 9 years. You're working so hard at that one problem, and you certainly don't want to let it go. That's your baby, right? but truth be told, you don't want to keep working on the same problem over and over again, right? You already did it. You have a PhD in that. You are the world expert in that field. You have a PhD. You wrote a thesis on it, and so you want to, branch out, learn something else new, do something different that might be related, right? And so that's what I did, right? So I knew that my chances of getting funding from NSF was slim, and chances of getting funding from DOE was also slim. And now I just want to branch out. I want to do something different, because going the same pipe again over and over was not going to get me anywhere. And so, going to the fellowship, I knew that I wanted to do something different. But I also want to do something that's similar to what I've been trained to do as a scientist. I want to use my scientific method, right? I want to be able to, write down the, what is it that I want to examine, set up the experiments, and get some data, and analyze some data, and write up conclusion, and write an impact statement, And so all those things I still do. It's kind of weird that in a different capacity, it's, and I do review quite a bit of R&D roadmap, research and development roadmap from the Office of Secretary of Defense for Research and Engineering. And in my area, believe it or not, they're working on communication methods and ways and means of communications. And guess what they're using? They're using wires, cables, lasers, what I I used to build in the lab and teach my students how to operate and use them. And so I get to see them. I get to work with them, kind of full cycle back and like, oh, okay, so this research and development roadmap involves all kinds of things that I want to do to begin with, which I never seen before from this perspective. And so that's one of the things I realized is that you have to go outside the box to see what's good inside the box. And if you want to go back inside the box, you can. But if you want to leave the box open and be going back and forth, and be able to traverse that and be able to have the capacity and capability to do both, I think you empower yourself a lot more than just being inside the box. Over.
Thank you both. There's one question in the chat that's actually a pretty common question of most folks, is do most people take the fellowship as a way to switch jobs or get a job in government, or are their fellows utilize their experiences to enhance their current positions or advance their current career path? And I think, and I'll kind of show what I'll share your table, and maybe hi if you want to add on. But really kind of like that's what the point of the fellowship is, right? Is, to kind of like give scientists that exposure to policy. We never say that you have to come in as this like premier policy expert. We think of this as like the opportunity to really introduce you to that career path, and then kind of to take those tools and then have like those experiences. It doesn't mean that you have to stay in policy either, right? After the fellowship, we have a lot of folks who will also go back into academia, and then we'll have people who go to industry, and then also like folks like Amy and I who will like either stay in government or stay at the state or work in a different agency. But yeah, that's kind of like the truth. That's really kind of like what scientists would see our program as, and is a pretty popular way to like if you're interested and you want to have that like transition point. The fellowship really lets you do that, and it also puts you in like a level of status, right? Because our fellows are known in DC, luckily, and like have have that like cachet to like be able to just like be a learner in those spaces. But yeah, I'll throw it to Amy and Hi if you have anything to add on to that.
Yeah, I would add that the fellowship is a year of learning, and it's a professional development. I would say, hey, if you're on sabbatical, take it as sabbatical. If you're a recent PhD, take it as a postdoc. Like this is your opportunity to learn something new and exciting, and be in the cities where it's great. There's happy hours every Friday, from what I heard. I participated in that in the past, and also there's opportunity to network and engage with past fellows who basically pretty much distributed pretty widely around the city and network within Washington D.C. metro region. And I always say, whenever I go to any agencies or any office within the Pentagon, when I knock on the door, chances are that, hey, there's a slim chance that there's a AAAS fellow will open the door and start talking to me, and I talk to them and build that network of people, like-minded individuals who had came similar background, scientific training. You'll find that once you're able to do that, you create your own network, and your professional and personal life will be more enriched because of that.
I'll just say, I wanted to get an idea of whether or not, this was really the path that I wanted to take. So I did the fellowship to make sure that, okay, I actually do want to get a job within the federal government. That was really why I was trying to figure out, do I have the skills to be able to do this? Do I have the interest to do this? Is this what I thought it was going to be? So that was the trajectory I was going down. But as a congressional fellow, there were a lot of people in the program who had just recently gotten a job as an assistant professor, and the program was just starting to onboard them, and there was going to be a significant amount of downtime. So they spent the first year as an assistant professor doing the AAAS Congressional Fellowship with the intention of going back to their faculty positions afterwards. And that worked out really well for them. most of the people that had gone down that path had gone back into their faculty positions, and this was just, a learning opportunity that now informs, the work that they're doing and how they're designing their research.
There's two questions here that are kind of related, so I'm going to kind of try to combine them. But there are folks who have heard that fellows have applied multiple times, and that's definitely true. and kind of like they're asking the both of you, like, what do you think made your application successful when you applied? And then the second question is, how should applicants gain policy experience prior to applying, which I think would, obviously might make your application more successful, but again, would add that we don't expect you to be a policy expert, but to have that idea of wanting to understand policy is obviously important. But to both of you, what was your experience to policy before the fellowship, and kind of like what about your application do you think was successful?
I would start by saying, please talk to alumni of the fellowship program or current fellows. That was something that was really helpful for me. As soon as I heard, I went to Duke University. As soon as I saw a press release about, another, AAAS fellow is coming from Duke, I would immediately contact them on LinkedIn and get to know, what their experience is so far. And 9 times out of 10, they'll offer to talk to you as you are applying for the fellowship program and offer to, review materials or, help you prepare for, interviews, things like that. So definitely talk to former fellows. The other thing that I wanted to say was, I think that it's just, as if you're at the graduate student stage, getting active in things like student government is a really great way of kicking things off in the policy space. But, one undertapped resource is getting in touch with your government affairs office at your university. A lot of times students don't know that office exists, but they are the ones interfacing with all of the policymaking bodies. And oftentimes they love to bring students with them to DC for Hill visits. So I think that's, tapping, their expertise and communicating with Congress and the executive branch is a really great way of learning more about what the roles you might be involved in might entail, and what opportunities are out there. And to add on to that, after I finished my PhD, I knew that I wanted to go the policy route. So rather than doing a biomedical postdoc, I opted for a health policy postdoc instead. So I was a postdoc at the UCSF Center for Tobacco Control Research. I had a cancer research background, but I had no experience in tobacco specifically or vaping. So that sort of research was a whole completely different area, but through my interviews with them and discussions with them, they were very much of the mindset of, if you bring the basic science expertise, we will help you with the policy side and get you up to speed on tobacco control policy. And that was a huge, help in me making the jump between academia and a science policy fellowship, being able to work a little bit more at the policy space of research. They are the ones that have their hands in so many different aspects of state, local, federal government, as well as academic research. And I think it's a great opportunity for people looking for an in-between, step.
Yeah, so it's hard to demand scientists and engineers to be a policy wonk or a policy expert, right? And so when you apply for this type of fellowship, this is a way to learn how to do policy, right? And a lot of people who claim to have done policy for many years, but if they're policies are not implemented or not making any impact, then doesn't matter how many years you've done it, you're not making any inway here or roadway here to improve anything. And so, case in point, I was in the in academia. I was in the dean's task force to rewrite the policy for the College of Arts and Sciences, and I was also in the president's task force to looking at the faculty handbook as a whole, trying to understand what are effective governance, right? And so the one thing that I would caution people when they start doing policy is when oh, okay, the project was, hey, let's take a look at the faculty handbook. That's what we're in charge of rewriting. Oh, okay. Well, then they start looking at the words and the policy. Well, you have to think about the impact it makes, the people it's going to impact. You have to talk to those people before you start writing any policy or rewriting anything. And so I think people who jump into policy without understanding people and the impact it makes on other people's lives, I think those are not real policy experts. And so I would caution the scientists and engineers on this phone call that you are going to be developing your policy skill set, and you already have your scientific knowledge and know-how, the scientific method and the skill set that you already have. Once you coming out of this fellowship, you're gonna be a force to be reckoned with. That's for sure. Over.
Yeah, I think like having sat in on a selection committee, right? Like again, no one expects folks to be policy experts before the fellowship, right? And I think what I've heard from both of you is really just like the idea of just caring about others and the impact that it makes, right? And I think if you're able to show that in your application, that does go a long way with the people who read, because at the end of the day, it's people who are reading your application, who are reading your statements, and making sure like that you have an active interest in policy and that you see the impact of it. And I think that is definitely what resonates the most. So thank you both for talking through that. I know we're getting pretty close to the end, so I wanted to just ask a couple more questions. But for both of you, if you can also maybe talk about the ways that you are involved in public policy post-fellowship, either professionally or personally, and kind of just like a general summary of like how you're involved in policy now. We'd love to kind of like give you that space to talk that through.
Well, a lot of the work that I do is really, I touched on a little bit in the data sharing space. And so, a lot of the time I am trying to get as much involved in the academic space as I can, and making sure that, I am engaging with all of the, researchers that are generating the data that is going to be shared, and making sure that we're creating policies that actually support the work that they're doing rather than inhibit the work that they're doing. So, a lot of my work in public policy now is bringing academic researchers to the table and making sure that they're involved in the policymaking process as opposed to, the government just speaking on behalf of, all of the people that are actually doing the work. So trying to bridge connections in public policy has become a bit of a passion of mine. Just figuring out how we can make those connections a little bit stronger between the researchers that are doing the work, the people who are benefiting from the research is meant to benefit, how we're making sure that, this fundamental resource, data, is, provided as a public good and accessible and equitable in its access for the public good. So thinking a little bit beyond just, some of the work that I had done in the past, and really trying to take it all together and create the connections needed.
Yeah, so the type of policy that I'm involved in is not necessarily public policy. It's policy that involves the Department of Defense, and so there, I want to ensure that whatever that I'm writing, say for example, a project that I'm working on, to mature technologies and to provide injection or funding into certain technology that provides certain capabilities to our department. I want to make sure that the policy that I'm crafting is really helping, as opposed to becoming like an impediment or making it more difficult, right? And so I want to make sure whatever that policy that I'm writing to mature technologies, it should help mature technologies and mature capabilities, and ensure that the warfighter has the capabilities that they need to defend our country and to defend democracy. In that way, I want to have the mission set in mind, and then the policy that in which I trying to craft are going to be supporting that mission set. And so whatever technology that I'm able to mature, I should be able to mature them at speed, at scale. And so I want to ensure that, hey, if we need to invest in quantum information science to mature our quantum information science or quantum communications, then that should be at speed, at scale, and it's going to be enhancing our capabilities, so that it satisfies the department mission. And so that's my goal. Over.
Thank you both. One more question I want to highlight before we start to close. Someone had asked if we're not at an institution that has connections to existing fellows, if there are networks or groups that they can reach out to for feedback or information from current or former fellows. One thing I'll add is like our fellows are probably the most approachable group to talk about the fellowship, right? Anytime I kind of like want to schedule these live chats or have opportunities for fellows to speak about their experience, I always get like the most receptive feedback and welcome to get that happening. So if you don't have an existing connection, like folks who are the fellows who are on LinkedIn who are making themselves very available to answer these questions. If you'd like to get in touch with a specific fellow, or if you want to work out, please email us at fellowships@shorthouse.org. We can always put the call out for the folks who would like to talk to prospective applicants as well. So I just want to answer that question before you get out of here. But please reach out to us, and we'll make sure that you have the chance to talk to a fellow. And this is what these chats are for as well. No, we're almost at the end, but I do want to ask one last question for both Amy and Hai. But if you can kind of talk about the most surprising way that your time as a fellow impacted your career trajectory or a different opportunity, if you can kind of maybe share a fun anecdote or that was surprising that you did not expect to happen at all.
I mean, I know we're talking about science policy, but a lot of the time you're not developing a policy to be implemented. You're not developing a new policy because we would have way too many policies. But I think what was really exciting for me, at least through the fellowship program, was when I started as an NIH fellow, I had the opportunity to help finalize the language for NIH's data management and sharing policy that just went into effect this year. And I used to talk in graduate school with my lab all the time because we'd be annoyed. We'd go to a conference and find out that another lab that we have been working on similar projects they've been years ahead of us in finding out that this doesn't work, that doesn't work, and here I am following up, figuring out that none of these things are working. You know, if we had gotten in the habit of sharing and reporting unpublished data, null results, that would have, you know, expedited at least my PhD. But, you know, a lot of, you know, research discovery, important research discovery. And so getting to be able to work in that space and actually creating a policy that is gonna, you know, usher in a huge culture change for biomedical research was just, you know, it was astounding to be a part of that and to feel like, you know, your voice is being heard in this, your experience is being heard in this, and you're creating something that is genuinely going to benefit, you know, the research community and the people who are benefited by the research community.
Yeah, the thing that surprised me was the level of trust that the government, you know, employee had on me when I was a AAAS fellow, because I came in with some experience in academia. I came in with a PhD in atomic physics because they, you know, they say, hey, the sky limit, just you define your fellowship impact plan, you define your impact statement, and in working with the with my mentor, you know, we came up with a really good set of things for me to do and really making an impact. And I felt that, you know, that level of trust was there and the level of need was there, so that, you know, hey, I, I can explore above and beyond what my traditional academic career could be. And so what surprised me was the level of trust that they had in me, and I thought I would not have otherwise. And so, all right, if you have this trust in me, if you empower me to do, would want to be able to do more things. And so that really changed the my career trajectory quite a bit. Oh.
Well, thank you both so much, Amy and Hi. Hi, especially over the phone. Thank you for coming through. Really appreciate both of you for making the time and, you know, having the chance to talk to our folks. Thank you for joining us. I'll see
Yeah,
you.
my apology if I didn't get the chance to join and see the people on the screen or whatnot. But I was actually, in fact, there was a AAAS fellowship orientation in the building, and so I gave a talk this morning already, and I had coming back, and so so my apology if I'm not able to join.
Thank you, Hi. It's a big AAAS day for you, and I really do appreciate you for making it through. And of course, you too, Amy, for making the time. So, some housekeeping notes. We as we've come up on the hour, thank you again for participating in the chat. We will send a recording of this conversation to you soon. The application is open. It's open for for a month and a half, so open through November 1st, and then we have our last live chat October 17th, where you can ask a fellow anything, whether that's about the application or interview process. Truly, that is our last opportunity to have you ask any questions in this type of setting. And then again, if we didn't get to your question, give us an email, STPF or fellowships@AAAS.org. Follow us on all the socials in there. But until then, we hope this is valuable for you. And again, thank you for joining us, and I hope you all have a great afternoon. But until next time, thank you.
Goodbye.